Welcome everyone to this special edition of the Geointerview. Today, we are in conversation with the Right Honourable Andrew Mitchell, serving as the Deputy Foreign Secretary in the Government of the United Kingdom. Our interview today will be focused on the India-UK bilateral relations and much more. But before we start, I would like to hand over to Mr. Lukhani, an inspiring young leader from the UK, to introduce our honourable guest today.
Thank you very much, Samya. Well, it is a great privilege to be introducing our UK Deputy Foreign Secretary, Right Honourable Andrew Mitchell. Andrew Mitchell's career is marked by an unwavering dedication to international development and public service. Educated at Rugby and Jesus College at the University of Cambridge, Andrew is also a fellow at Cambridge University and was a visiting fellow at Harvard University. He was an officer in the 1st Royal Tank Regiment, serving with the United Nations military forces in Cyprus. And up until the recent calling of the UK general election, he was a member of Parliament for the royal town of Sutton Coldfield since 2001 and is now seeking re-election. He has been serving as the Secretary of State for International Development and Africa since October 2022, a role he has previously occupied. And Andrew has also been instrumental in strengthening UK-India relations, especially during his visit for the G20 presidency held in India to boost cooperation on development, including through climate and tech partnerships. His professional and personal endeavors reflect a life dedicated to service, leadership, and making a positive impact on the global stage. Over to you, Samya.
Thank you, Lukhani, for that remarkable introduction. And with that, we welcome you, sir. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that very generous and kind introduction, Lukhani, which was very decent of you to present me. So it sounded a bit like an obituary, but I am very much still alive.
So, sir, before we dive deep into the agenda for our interview today, I would like to know that how would you describe your role as the Deputy Foreign Secretary of the Government of United Kingdom?
Well, as the Foreign Secretary, the Foreign Minister is in the upper house, the House of Lords. My role as the Deputy Foreign Secretary is to look after the elected house, the House of Commons. And so I take responsibility for foreign affairs in the lower chamber, the House of Commons, but also I'm the Minister for International Development and for Africa. So I have quite a heavy workload. But of course, Parliament is now dissolved. And although I continue to be the Deputy Foreign Secretary until the election, and maybe thereafter, who knows, my role as a Member of Parliament has now ended when Parliament was dissolved. And so I'm now the Deputy Foreign Secretary and the Conservative candidate for the royal town of Sutton Coldfield.
So as you mentioned that you have been the Secretary of State in the UK government's Foreign Office for about 2 years now. And given that your role is at the very core of the policy making procedure, can you let us know about the United Kingdom's vision of the world order? Like, what does the future look like?
Well, of the world order, you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, the United Kingdom is a very strong believer in the international rule of law and the international system. And that's something which we have always championed. After the war, we were at the heart of setting up the United Nations and the Bretton Woods arrangements, the IMF, the World Bank. All of these are things which Britain really did an awful lot to try and promote. So we are very strong believers in the international system. And obviously, Britain has a long heritage and a detailed history going back many, many hundreds of years, and also an engagement as a huge trading nation around the world as well. So our heritage and our history, the Commonwealth, the United Nations, where Britain is one of the permanent 5 members, all these things, NATO, they are all Britain's international outreach and our involvement in the wider world.
So you mentioned that the United Kingdom has been a trading nation, and we know that there are a lot of areas of cooperation between India and the UK. As Lukhani mentioned, you were here for the G20 summit, and you also had a meeting with our External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar. My question is that how do you view this bilateral relationship and its future, specifically focusing on the FTA being signed?
Well, it's an incredibly close relationship between Britain and India. We have a deep historic connection back for centuries. When I was in Varanasi for the G20 Development Ministers meeting and had the pleasure of spending some time with the External Affairs Minister, I was deeply conscious of the shared links and very strong connections that there are between Britain and India. And of course, you know, I have in my own constituency here of Sutton Coldfield, the head of the Royal Sutton Coldfields Indian Society, who founded it in the West Midlands. So the links aren't just international, they're also national and local between the Indian community and Britain, and in India between the British community and India.
So in this era of digitalization, it is quite imperative to talk about artificial intelligence and information technology. How is the United Kingdom visualizing the advancement of technological cooperation with India? And what are the areas that are identified as particularly promising for the future collaborations?
So AI is a particular area of interest. We have a prime minister who is very technologically advanced. He's a tremendously capable technocrat, right at the cutting edge of technology and so forth. And Britain has hosted artificial intelligence summits in the UK. We've had one very recently. And we are conscious that artificial intelligence could do an enormous amount of good. And just as we're very keen to ensure that the digital divide is minimized so that poor countries are able to focus on the benefits of the digital economy, so also we want artificial intelligence to be available to poor countries. And when I was in India and we were contributing to the G20 discussions about development, both India and Britain were very keen to see that the benefits of AI were spread as widely as possible.
So talking about the internet, we also come towards the younger generations. You have spoken about the importance of the contributions made by the youth on multiple platforms. My question is that how do you look at this vibrant young generation, the youth, as drivers of change leading us into the future?
Well, I think that young people in Britain particularly have pluses and minuses over old people's generations like mine. So, you know, we never had the internet. We never had the advantages of globalization. There are disadvantages too of globalization, but there are tremendous advantages. We never had those advantages, whereas your generation does have the internet and globalization and all that goes with modern technology and game. But on the other hand, my generation in Britain found it much easier to own a home, far younger. And there are other disadvantages as well. I think that social media has imposed stresses and strains on young people that when I was that age, we never had. Mind you, when I was that age, we never even had a mobile phone. It's hard to believe, I know, for people of your and Lucani's generation, but we didn't. So there are pluses and the minuses across the generations. But I find when I go around the schools in Sutton Coldfield and I meet young people, I find them full of idealism and the desire to change the world for the better and to help. And I think that's enormously encouraging.
We see that the way to the future is increasing the pluses and decreasing the challenges. And so, like you mentioned, that you have served as the Honorable Member of Parliament for the Royal Town of Sutton Coldfield for almost 3 decades now. I would like to know that how has this journey been, and if you could emphasize on your experience as an MP.
So it's not quite 3 decades. It's that may feel like it for some of my constituents. It's 23 years, and it is really one of the greatest honours of my life to have been the MP for Sutton Coldfield and to have fought for the interests of the town, which I love, and all the people who live in it, regardless of whether they were Conservative voters or voting for another party. That's my joy and my duty. And representing somewhere like Sutton Coldfield is fantastic honour and opportunity. It is a comparatively wealthy community. We have our own tradition. We are an ancient royal town. And my job really is to look after the town, look after all the people who live in it, and make sure that those things which are worth preserving are preserved, and where things are not good enough, like, for example, our town centre, which has been badly damaged by the digital economy because bricks and mortar retail are so very much under pressure these days. It is to make those things better and ensure that we genuinely improve wherever we can. So, for example, we have an old cottage hospital in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield, which I'm intent on changing into a hub for older folk so that they can remain in their own homes, because they're getting very strong support within Sutton Coldfield in our cottage hospital for their whatever ailment is afflicting them in older age, so that they are able to stay in their own homes. So that's the job of the Member of Parliament for Sutton Coldfield. During my time here, I've also been a minister on two separate occasions. I've worked, as you were kind enough to say in your introduction, in the world of international development. So it's a mixture of looking after the town as a Member of Parliament and also pursuing, on behalf of my country and the government, my ministerial role, which, as I say, predominantly has been in respect of foreign affairs and international development.
So that has definitely been a very inspiring journey. And moving on to a little of geopolitics, the Indo-Pacific region is increasingly becoming a focal point of strategic importance, even so for countries which are thousands of kilometers away, like the UK. If you could please elaborate as to why this region holds so much importance to the UK and the world.
Well, this is a region which has some of the highest growth levels in the world. It's a region where Britain has huge economic interests, also huge security interests. It's a part of the world where we have very strong historic connections and also profound heritage connections as well. So we are very pleased indeed to be so fully immersed in the Indo-Pacific area, and we think it's in our interests both as a trading nation, an investing nation, and also in our security interests too.
I think the Indo-Pacific is actually on a upward graph for its importance. And coming on to the last question for today, based on your expertise through years of service, if you could please enlist the expectations that you have from the future generation of leaders as well as leading nations for a better tomorrow.
Well, a better tomorrow is one that promotes free trade, that promotes international investment, that addresses the egregious, difficult differences in wealth and opportunity which persist in our world, which makes sure that there is an international system which binds people together and bears down on those who are dictators or autocrats who abuse the role of leadership, which they have in many cases stolen rather than being elected to. It is spreading accountability and democracy, and it is making sure that the world tomorrow is better than the world today. And in my lifetime, I don't think I've ever known a time where the international community, the international system has been so broken. And it's at a time when we really need the international system to tackle issues of migration, to tackle pandemics, to tackle climate change, to deal with these things which affect everyone in our world. You need more international cooperation, and yet we live in an era where narrow nationalism has been very strong indeed. So if I look forward to the work of the next generation of the world in 10, 20, 50 years' time, those are the things I would want to see addressed.
This has been an extremely enriching conversation, sir, and I look forward to the opportunity of speaking to you at length on some of the topics we touched upon today. Thank you so much for talking to us today. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure, and goodbye from the royal town of Sutton Coldfield.